Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about the they, them, and other dragons, which is basically the influence of other people, alive and dead, on your brain and on your mind. Your brain is always listening. These dragons are the most emotionally charged of all the dragons, which is why they can make you upset than any of the other ones.
Well, and they can
especially when the relationship goes sour.
Well, they can also hold you back, or they can motivate you to behave a certain way.
Your brain is always listening to the criticisms and encouragements of past sweethearts, the words and deeds of your current spouse. And if you're not in a relationship, what you imagine that other person is likely to say or act toward you. Your brain is always listening. I mean, you're wired for love because that's how the species continues.
So I would love to know one of your, tell me one of negative things from the past that someone has told you that stuck for a long time, one of your past relationships that sort of, affected you in a negative way or motivated you in a negative, positive or negative.
I remember my first wife, if she was upset at 11 o'clock at night, she'd want to talk about it till 3 a.m. And when I'm like, I have to work tomorrow, you don't care about me. And so it was clearly a manipulation to control me. And, but it happened way more than once. And so am I not a caring person or what? And if you don't draw boundaries, it can really wear you out. Being in a difficult relationship is chronically stressful. And if you don't learn to either, okay, let's get this help or move on, it can really damage you both physically, psychologically, socially, spiritually.
Absolutely. So I have one that also was a manipulative thing. It was a very unhealthy relationship, which says more about me at the time and how I picked than it. I actually write about it in my book because it's really important to take stock and take responsibility. But I was dating someone very unhealthy, very emotionally abusive, and said when I was going back to school and I had a lot of dreams and I knew I was really smart, was trying to keep me from doing that and said, the only way you're getting through school is on your back. And that was so painful, but it motivated me. It motivated me to do really well in school to prove this person wrong. But the problem was I then saw myself as stupid if I got anything less than an A in everything. So you have to be really careful with those. But I also want to point out the flip side of that, because now being with someone where the relationship is amazing, where it's really healthy, that also is always in my ear. So when I'm stressed out about something, things are, I think things are like going crazy and it's not going to be okay. I always have in my head, you're like, it's fine. It's all going to be fine. It's all going to be okay. And you've got this. It's just, that's always in my head. So even when I feel like the whole world is crumbling around me, I always in the back of my head, it's what would you say? I know what you would say. And then somehow that settles me down. So you've got both, you know what I mean? You have to be able to.
Well, I feel like we are so blessed because of how good we get along almost all the time. And I know half the people who get married get divorced, and the other half who stay together are unhappy because relationships are hard, that they take a lot of work. And some of it's luck. Some of it is there's a good fit. And some of it's not a good fit. But if for religious reasons, I think that's why I stayed for 20 years.
Yeah.
Or the kids, it's another reason why I stayed. That you feel trapped that it's chronically stressful, chronically painful. And if you say at some point, this doesn't fit, you are not a bad person. It, I just, sometimes it doesn't fit. And the chronic stress hurts people more than the pain of separation. But when people separate, that's when they get crazy.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's when you read about murder, suicide, and all of that, because attachment is a basic human need. And when the attachment frays or it breaks, often people feel very unbalanced, sometimes for years.
Yeah. So it seems to me like a really good exercise would be to pay attention and write down things that when you find those thoughts coming up, it's like, where's that coming from? Is that coming from, one of those voices from the past, one of those dragons from the past, from a relationship like the one I had? It's really important, but also pay attention when you have the good ones. Like, you constantly tell me I'm one of the most competent people, one of the smartest people, So don't just write down the bad ones, write down the good ones so you can pay attention. Right.
Well, in criticizing your spouse, you're really criticizing yourself, because you picked him or her. And I think what works for us is we don't do that. Mm-hmm. And we notice what we like. Well,
and we are not afraid to apologize.
Than what we don't like. Right. And we're not afraid to say, I don't like when you do that.
Right. You have to be able to say that safely.
So there's clarity, assertiveness. In my books, I write about relating. 100% responsible for how we turn out, right? At least for my actions. It's easy to blame someone else. It's much harder to go, what can I do to make this better? That we're good with empathy and seeing things from each other's point of view. We've been good at listening. Mm-hmm. Assertiveness. We're both assertive people. We have time. I think in the pandemic, we had more time. We don't believe every stupid thing we think. That's the eye we inquire. We notice what we like. And we're good with grace and forgiveness.
And, there's only a fight if you pick up the, the sword. So it's like people get defensive, and then that's where the fight starts. So the first act of war is defense, right? So if you say, this hurts my feelings, I don't like it when you do that, there's only a fight if I'm like, if I get defensive and I try to defend it.
But you do too.
Or it's like,
that is a common response.
Yeah, but if you can just step back for a second and go, and we all do it sometimes, but if you can step back for a second and go, oh, I'm sorry. And you start off like that, like, what about that bothers you? It's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. And I'm actually pretty conscious of, if I don't like something, I'll notice when you do the opposite, because that way you just know what I like. And you do. You're really good at noticing it. So what can you do better to tame the former, current, and prospective lover dragon? It's such an interesting. Now, they get triggered when you feel unloved. And that's when they're breathing fire on you. What can you leave behind? You don't need the people you end up breaking up with. You don't need their voice in your head, because it really can mess a lot of people up. So what did you learn about relationships? I'd love if you post relating, responsibility, empathy, listening, assertiveness, time. I is inquire into the negative thoughts you have. N is notice what you like more than what you don't. G is grace and forgiveness. John Gottman has great books on relationships. He talks about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That if you're defensive, just like you said, if you're critical, if you stonewall, if you're condescending, those things predict the end of your relationship. And so, as opposed to defensiveness, be open. Condescending is just cruel. Kindness is important. Criticism, not helpful. Notice what you like more than what you don't. And stonewalling is you just stop communicating. That's death for a relationship.
I don't think that that's me. I don't stonewall.
Stay with us.
Your brain is always listening. I am thrilled to be your guide and show you how to tame your dragons so that you can have the happiness, peace, and the relationships you deserve.
Welcome back. We are talking about internet troll dragons, something we know a little bit about. Anytime you've got a platform, no matter how big or small, if you've got a platform and you're out there every day, you're going to get some of this. So internet troll dragons, let's talk about how they affect people, what you can do about them and how these voices actually, what toll they take.
Well, it's very interesting that if you write books like you and I, a book that has only 5-star reviews, people actually don't believe because they know the world is filled with people who have a different opinion. But sometimes an internet troll is someone who is just so hurtful.
Yeah, the vitriol. You can just...
And so hateful that it's not about you, that it's about them and that they have more than 6.
Yeah, or they'll
dragons.
say things that really don't make sense in context to what you're saying. It's just viciousness coming out.
And you said something earlier is what you think of me is none of my business.
And it's not your job to love me, it's mine.
And, I know Byron Katie teaches this, Terry Cole teaches this, who we're going to interview in one of our podcasts coming up. She's writing a book on boundaries, that hurt people. And so you often wonder with the real haters, where does that come from? And I've experienced it actually fairly intensely. But if you're going to go against the grain, you just have to expect you're going to upset some people.
Right.
And if you're not upsetting people, then you're probably not doing anything that's new
useful.
and useful. So,
but everybody's got their own life experience, their own hurts, their own, whatever's going on, their own differences in religion or politics or whatever. And so there's no possible way everything you say is going to agree with them. How people deliver it, who knows why they're so angry and vicious. But the fact that I stand by what I said, it really has less to do with you than it does to do with them and their own background, their own experiences.
Well, being one of 7, if you have 5 sisters, somebody was mad at you.
And part of that could be their cycle. And I'm going to get hate mail from women when I say that. But, our moods fluctuate. And that's not just women. Men's moods fluctuate. Men get angry too. It's like part of it could be, cyclical. It could be just you had a fight with your wife and you need someone to take it out on. I mean, there's so many things.
I wonder if there's ever been a study on that, on negativity associated with time of cycle.
I don't know, but I mean, we all know, like, I even, like, my daughter and I joke about it. It's like, we know, like, we'll come back later and say, okay, like, is it that time of the month? Is it okay? But we know better than to ever say it at that time of the month. Don't ever say it then.
Well, and people who don't believe in PMS don't have 5 sisters. That's just, and 3 daughters and 14 nieces. It's like, I say exactly the same thing, day 4 of her cycle, and she just thinks it's funny. And when I say it at day 26, it's like, you bastard.
But do yourself a favor and never say it'll be better in a couple days. Just don't ever say that.
Well, thank God you, it was never a huge problem with you. I write about it in Change Your Brain, Change Your Life.
No. Let's take that back. I knew. The difference was I was aware that it was me.
Well, me.
So I wanted to go away. Like, it's like, let me just be alone for the next.
But I have treated people who've attacked their husbands with.
Oh, no. I withdrew.
Or got suicidal. I mean, it really changes. But the whole point in the internet troll thing is
you don't know.
It may not be about you.
It's not.
Now, I think it's always good when you get feedback to assess it, because it may be helpful. It's like, oh, could I do that better? When we started the podcast together, we'd have some people, criticize our interaction. And I think for us, we thought about it and we go, well, can we do this better? And I believe we interrupt each other less than we did before.
Right. And this we're a married couple, and this isn't a produced, it's just our natural interaction. But yes, we always want to listen. But at the same time, ask yourself, like, am I putting something out there with the intention of triggering people? Or is it something that is people are reacting to and there's really not a good reason? Because some people put stuff out there with the intention of triggering people. You see it all the time. We all do.
Well, because that can drive
it's
traffic.
Clickbait, right?
That people pay attention to negativity more. So, you always think of consider the source. The problem on the internet is you don't know the source. You often don't know what's real, what's not real. And, for example, with my TED Talks, they have almost 18 million views and they're 97% positive. So I feel really good about that. But a lot of people haven't trained their mind and they look for the ones that are not positive and they let that hurt them.
Right.
So you want to be careful about that.
So I think a couple things you can do is ground yourself, ask yourself if what they're saying is true or not. If it's not true, then just tell yourself it's more about them than it is about me. And for me, and this is up to you, some people call it censoring. I don't censor anything that's just someone's opinion about something if it's not hurtful. As long as it's something that is just opinion or it's helpful to the rest of my community, it can stay there. I don't care if they're agreeing with me, disagreeing with me, doesn't matter. If it's just pure vitriol and hate, it goes. It's my page. If you don't like it, you can go find another page to follow. If it's hateful and mean and just not helping the community at all, it needs to be off my page. And I block them.
So boundaries is actually very important. I know you've thought about that a lot. So have you been the victim of internet trolls? Don't take it personally. Everybody is the victim of that in the digital age we know about. Stay true to what you believe, your message. You'll feel so much better about it. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've been talking about the they, them, and other dragons, and we only have one more to go. Actually, we have two more to go. Today, we're going to talk about society dragons.
Oh, boy.
This is what just made you crazy. During the pandemic. And it's the they dragons. And in the book, it's, there's like a dozen faceless dragons. It's what we think they think about us, or they think we should think about, when there really is no they.
No, this is the they that my mother always calls me. Oh, they said this is what we have to do. They said this is, the world is ending. They said, and this is why I don't watch the news. It's they are the reason.
There's a herd mentality And that's why if you go to most news sites, USA Today or the New York Times or CNN or Fox, they're basically covering the same things, which is they are deciding what's important.
Right. And maybe this is going to sound really cynical and people are going to get mad, but I like the one thing that you mentioned a long time ago. And I actually have raised, my daughter and now our nieces with this idea that the masses are kind of the asses. You have to think for yourself.
Tana, did you say that?
I did. And
do you know where I first heard that?
Where?
In my philosophy class at Vanguard
University.
I
like it.
The Professor Murray Dempster, he's my favorite professor, loved him. And he said, if you just pay attention to groupthink, I don't like it. The masses are the asses.
Right. Because what happens
and this was at a Christian school. So those of you that are going, oh, they said a bad word.
No, people jump on the bandwagon with one thought. And I saw this so much during all the crazy political societal stuff. And I didn't see it with one side. Let's be clear. So you saw one side go to one extreme, and then I saw the other side go to the other extreme. And I was just like, what is happening right now? It's so toxic when people can't think for themselves. Like, you really need to step back and think for yourself. Do your own research. And I've always told the kids this. Whenever they come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, did you see what's going on right now? And I'm like, how do you know that's true? Like, chances are it's not true. Bring me the research. Tell me why you think what you're thinking. I want to know the why behind it. Who is actually saying it? What's your source?
I think now more than ever, there is so much misinformation about the pandemic and about the societal unrest.
And people have more tools than ever to be able to make it look real.
So when someone says to you, they, what should your response be?
Who is they?
Who are they?
Who are they? That's what I say to my mom. Who are they? Who are these people you're talking about?
And how does it fit with who you are?
Right.
And what your values are? It's so important to define them.
Right. And that's the next thing I'll often say to my mom is, why does this matter? How is this going to change my day or your day? How is this going to change the world? Like, why does this matter right now?
And as we all often say, where you bring your attention determines how you feel. And, I just hated the political divide. And I've never seen it impact my patients as much during this last election on both sides. That if you didn't believe as the other person
then you're not trustworthy.
Then they would automatically diminish you. And
oh no, they were just like, I can't be your friend anymore. Okay. Just, it's like,
yes, there'll be a special place in hell for you.
Yes. It's like, how many times I've heard that from people on both sides. It's like, there will be a special place in hell for if you don't blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well.
And we purposefully try to be apolitical because we want to help everybody.
No, that doesn't mean we don't have our own beliefs, but we really try to not get caught up in the extremes and all the vitriol and the just the intensity of the craziness that goes on with the fringe.
Well, and they actually found fringe on the left and fringe on the right have the same brain.
Oh,
it's rigid and it's not flexible. And it's sadder, interestingly enough. I have a new study coming out. I haven't even told you about it, on happiness. So we gave 344 people the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire, and we have their scans.
Interesting.
And we've analyzed their scans.
Don't you think, though, being in quarantine for the better part of a year made it worse?
I think isolation, for some people, not everybody, makes them dramatically
You don't think it gave people
worse.
Too much time to think?
For some people. So the introverts love the isolation because other people stress them out.
Right. I tend to be like that.
Drains them.
Yeah.
I loved being at home.
Right. Me too.
With you.
Yeah.
I mean, we had more time with the children.
I mean, I get a little bored now and then, want to get out, but
right.
overall.
I mean, I think for people whose businesses were damaged or whose jobs were damaged, the isolation was terrible.
So I don't like being told I have to be home.
I don't like being told anything. Let's just be honest.
I don't like the shutdown. I don't like being told I have to be home, but I like being home.
You don't like it when anybody tells you anything.
No, I'm likely to not be very cooperative.
You have the no bad habit, right? Which we're going to talk about coming up. So taming them and other dragons, the society dragon is a big deal. What do you believe? And when someone says they, the question is, who are they? And do you respect them? Do you look up to them? Do you want to be like them? And if you don't know the faceless dragons.
And I would take it a step further and say, what is the source? Like, not just who are they, where are they getting this information? So.
Did you learn anything? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites. We're always so grateful. Help us grow the Brain Warriors Way podcast. Go to Brain Warriors Way podcast, leave us a comment, question, or review. And if you do, and we read it, we'll enter you into a drawing to win one of our signed books. Stay with us. Welcome back. So this is going to be the last podcast on the They, Them, and Other Dragons. And they're super cute. They're the other people's dragons. They're contagious. Your brain is always listening to the voices of many other dragons, including bosses, coworkers, religious leaders, politicians, store clerks, news reporters, media personalities. These dragons can be critical, hurtful, attacking, competing, indifferent, or they can be encouraging, positive, comforting, and engaged. It's like all the other people in your life. And I remember when I was a grocery store clerk, that I could make someone smile just by being friendly. Or I could make them really angry at me if I was withdrawn in myself and a little bit snarky. But other people have a dramatic impact on how you feel. I remember when I lived in Hawaii, and I loved Hawaii because I tend not to pay attention to too many other people. I'm always in my
You're
head.
Always like that. No, you tend to see the positive in almost everything.
But the person I was with at the time just had to leave because she felt the racism against Caucasians, because Hawaii is an Asian culture. And if you're not Hawaiian or Asian, you're sort of less than other people.
Interesting. But you are a person who chooses, like I joke that you have Mickey and Minnie in your head doing the waltz. It's the happiest place on earth, because literally something truly crazy can be going on around us. And you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, oh, it's going to be fine. Like, you are one of those people. So it's pretty Pollyanna in there.
So I'm going to actually give you guys a skill. This is the one to write down. I was talking about it in our huddle this morning. Many of you know Ariana Grande and her song, Thank You, Next. Well, if you think about that, I think how she was meaning it is
a little different
in the Black Widow sense.
Yeah.
But the essence of mental health, and I developed this, and I'm not really sure where I developed it, but being a shrink for 40 years, I try to pay attention to good mental habits, is that's actually a very important psychological principle.
Yeah.
And so, for example, you had to file bankruptcy, and it was very painful and very hard. But your tendency is not to look back with regret, but to go, what's next?
Responsibility.
It's how can I respond to this situation? And too many people get stuck in what other people think of them.
Yeah, I learned.
But what's really helpful is when something's not working, is to say thank you, bless it, and then look forward to whatever's next.
So when you have teenagers, you learn all these little things. And one of the most simple ones I learned, teenagers have this funny way of saying bye-bye. when they're like done with something, it's like, bye-bye. So bye-bye.
Well, and one of the things a lot of parents get very sad at is emptiness.
Oh, don't even start. Did you just had to go there?
Well, I think it's really important. One of my sister-in-laws, her children and grandchildren moved across the country. And it's so devastating. But it's because she looks back rather than forward.
Yeah, the only thing keeping me from sort of losing my mind over that is I'm looking forward for my daughter. I'm like excited for her to start her life. Otherwise, I would just be, last year was really hard for me because she was at that phase where she was pulling away from me. We were attached at the hip for so long. And I mean, we did everything together. Literally, she was in my lap like all the time, even as a teenager. And then bam, she just was like ready to fly. And I'm like, but I'm not ready for you to fly. So that year was really painful.
So you weren't able to do thank you next.
Not for about a year. It took me, and I knew it wasn't her though. The good thing was I knew.
And it's not easy.
No, so I knew it wasn't her. So I had to do that work on myself. It was really painful. So I had to do that work on myself and remind myself this is her life. And so now the thing that she's getting ready to leave for college, what I remind myself is it's her time to fly. This is exciting. This is an exciting time for her. So whenever I start to get that little funk, inside, it's like, this is an exciting time for her. I'm going to get lots of air miles. So like those, I'll like think about the positives.
You're always going to stay connected to her. But if you stay too connected when she's trying to separate, you'll damage the relationship.
And she'll be resentful, right?
You'll damage yourself and you'll damage the relationship. So admitting when things are over. And I mean, I remember before I met you, I got my heart broken and I just couldn't move on, which was a horrible place to be. But one of my friends said I got my heart broken open. I mean, I think I did the most
That's a good phrase.
Psychological work on myself through that pain. But shout out to Ariana Grande, because it's really a very important psychological principle that, and it goes with the serenity prayer. It's just a cooler way of saying the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. So thank you next and bye-bye.
We'll see you next time. Take care.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.